Okay, Orange Slice has two different programs. It has a teacher rubric and it has a student rubric. The teacher rubric, I'll start with that one, is a tool used for teachers so they can actually, in the most simplest and most direct way, have a software program that brings them the information that they need in that moment to create a rubric. And so the teacher isn't looking all around. Their focus is spent more time on the paper, more time on the assignment, and less time with the add-on of the app. Because that's where your attention needs to be, right? So your attention is all on the document, and then you just notice where you need to be. It brings it to you, presents it to you, so you can just click and go. It then takes that, brings it all together, colors your rubric for you, and then converts it into a grade. And then there's other options on there too for grade adjustments, like if it's late, if there's a plagiarism issue, if there is extra credit you want to assign, there's options to do that too. There's some more options coming up here I want to include with it to really highlight the synergy between Orange Slice and Google Drive, because there's a beautiful relationship there that hasn't been unfolded yet, and that's coming. So student rubric then is for peer-to-peer learning, because I feel personally that peer-to-peer learning is like super important. It's very valuable, and students need that interaction, because they don't just need to hear me talking all day, right? They don't just need to go to YouTube, they need to go to somewhere, to another app. They need their peer who knows what it's like to be 16, 17, 18, or 10 or 12, however old your students are. They need that when it talks, someone else that talks their own language. So the idea was 2 years ago, and we weren't one-to-one yet. We were going one-to-one last year. Mm-hmm. So 2 years ago, I'm working with some programs, and I'm in my earth science class, I'm grading, and I'm realizing that as I'm grading this, I'm not consistent. And I want to be consistent because students deserve that. And I want that also to offer them. And then the second part was, when I'm writing the grade of the document, I just put it up there on top, right? And maybe, let's say I put a B up there. Well, that B is just a normal font. It doesn't stand out like that's my grade, so it's difficult for the student to find it. Two, you look at what the rest of the student put down on their document. Maybe they brought in some images from outside. Maybe they included some video. They made it a rich multimedia experience. And you just put the letter B up there on top. It's like, yeah, that doesn't work, right? My feedback to them should look equally as professional as what they presented, if not more, right? That's really the goal. What's completely different with Google Docs and Google Apps Script, because you've got the client side, which is where you're at, which is what I was dealing with before, but everything is done on the web, on the cloud, I guess, with Google, and so you work with the server. So you have to have the language within the clients, which is where you're at, and then you have to have the language to communicate properly with the server, and then bring that back. And then within that, there's the presentation of the information, which is the HTML, the CSS, you know. You can include JavaScript into that, which I didn't know anything about that. And then there's Google Apps Script, which you can include in that. And then so how do you have variables go between Google Apps Script, between JavaScript, have a dynamically loaded web page that then works with the client side as well as the server side. And so you get all this stuff going around like this, and I got to store data. And there was many times it was completely frustrating. I thought, I'm done, forget it. Mm-hmm. It's beyond me, it's not going to happen. But it always seems like, well, let me back up. As a product design engineer, I recognized many times, it was faced many times between the design and what the management needed and what sales needed, that you're going to get to a point in a project where it was impossible to solve the problem. It was impossible to take the next step. So the only way to change things is to redefine, have a new perspective, a new paradigm. And once that new paradigm happens, then it's like, there's a path, right? Maybe we can't do this, but here's 3 things we can get. Will that work? Oh yeah, that works great. You know, I just did some searches on the internet, and eventually something would kind of pop up, and that would change my perspective a little bit and open up another door and move in this direction. And then move in this direction, and all of a sudden, I had this problem solved without realizing it, and I'm moving forward. So, perseverance, perseverance, perseverance. Okay, so this is an add-on and not an app, and just the way Google handles it differently. And a part of that difference is where they store the add-on. The add-on they store actually in a file, so I would go to my files, my Google Drive here, and here's my file right there. So I open that up, and here's the one I work from right here, the master file. I go under Tools and select Script Editor. That brings up the actual code. And the code itself, I have this many different tabs right here. Each tab has its own purpose, its own script. Some of these tabs are like this top one right here, which is Teacher HTML. So this is the one you see, the sidebar over here. This is the script here. Well, debugging is like its own entire language, and there's a couple different steps in doing that. As you run something, you can go to View Execution Script. And so here's a script I ran. And if it all runs fine, it'll say at the end, execution succeeded. If there's an issue, it will say there was an error on line 295 on this page. Biggest one I've discovered here lately, it helps out a bunch, is going up here to the 3 bars right there, More Tools, and then Developer Tools. Right. This brings up something else here, and there's a whole bunch of stuff here that I have no clue what it means. But what I do know is if it runs properly, then an error message will not show here. So if I open up Teacher Rubric, so it says it's initialized, it's going to its sandbox mode, and this is loaded up. So this is loaded up perfectly. There's no HTML issues, there's no issues anywhere. If there's an issue, this will all dance in red up here, and there'll be all kinds of bits and pieces of information. I just don't know what it is. So when I make changes, I'll make a change with 1 line or 2 lines at a time. I'll come back here, and I'll hit reload this, and I'll check this and see if what I changed has an impact right there. I just know it's not red, so it's working. Let's go forward.